343 Industries took the Halo community and millions of gamers by surprise this E3 by revealing a couple Halo Infinite campaign cutscenes stitched together that reveal quite a lot of information about the plot and story. Today, I'm going to break down who this AI is, a few theories that actually makes a lot of sense based on previous evidence that we've gotten throughout the years that have been leading to this kind of exposure to the story, and tons of juicy story details that you don't want to miss. Guys, before we jump into it, be sure to smash that like button blue and subscribe. Join me on the journey of following everything relating to Halo Infinite. So let's start with the juicy part of this reveal, which is the Discover Hope Part 2 segment. It's been almost 2 years since we've seen the first part of this, where the pilot was lost at space and eventually found Master Chief after, I think, about 4 to 6 months, lost drifting in space after some big defeat the UNSC had versus the Banished. This first scene has likely changed quite a bit from what we saw back in 2019, now that Chief has a pistol, not an AR, although he eventually does grab one in these cuts where he's flying throughout space. I also noticed that Chief's AI chip port actually lights up when the pilot speaks to him over comms. I don't know if this might actually have some bigger meaning, but yeah, that's some cool little thing to notice. Eventually, Chief makes it to the nearby Banished ship. However, there is kind of a tricky cut that did confuse me at first, but they're actually in a completely different part of the story and campaign between these two shots. And in fact, if you actually look in the background, there's a bunch of these floating kind of pillar object structures zipping around, and it's very obvious that they're inside Zeta Halo somewhere. Perhaps they're inside of one of those floating pillar structures that we've seen so much of and is even present on the cover art. If you're not completely caught up with Halo lore, you might be a little bit confused and not even know where to start guessing as to what is going on here. So let me help, and let's start from the beginning, okay? So even though others and I have theorized this for quite a while, I was still thrown off a little bit when I first saw this. We're going to call this AI the weapon, all right? There's been rumors for years about Chief having a new AI. There was a male AI or even copies of Cortana, but it looks like they are going with perhaps her younger sister, Kalmiya, which I will fully explain later, but listen to this cutscene as far back as Halo 4. It seems that 343 has had plans to do this all along, and Cortana even foreshadowed this eventual reality, right? And suspected that it would be another Cortana model, which I would say is most definitely the case here. This is another Cortana model, all right? But before I break that down, let's watch this scene together.
They'll pair you with another AI. Maybe even another Cortana model if Halsey lets them.
That's not going to happen.
It won't be me. You know that, right?
The missions change. They always do.
Are you sure?
Oof. Okay, so that didn't age well, but Cortana clearly states that Chief would be getting another Cortana model if Halsey lets them, and of course she did, right? Of course she created this AI, as that would make the most sense. Now, as to where she is, if she's even alive, if the Infinity did blow up, that's a whole other thing to think about. But in the Halo novel Shadows of Reach, if you don't know, Blue Team was inserted onto Reach well after the story of Halo 5 and successfully grabbed about 4 boxes, including a cryobin, one that might be containing a brain of Dr. Halsey. And why this is key is because what she did, how Cortana was created, was actually extremely illegal. In fact, it was so illegal that the UNSC Infinity wouldn't even tolerate with what she was doing and how she was doing it, which was basically duplicating herself, making clones of her brain. But why Blue Team was trying to gain access to these boxes, which may include a brain of Dr. Halsey, they encountered Cortana's younger sister, aka earlier prototype of Cortana, and her name was Kalmiya. You know, when I first read this book, I was super disappointed that there was nothing juicy in it because we don't know what's inside these boxes or cryobin. However, we do know about the interaction between Kelly and Kalmiya. And Kalmiya here is actually just a subroutine and she's dead. But it makes me think perhaps this was a foreshadowing to her being created by Dr. Halsey, recreated by Dr. Halsey, to be used to kill and delete Cortana. In fact, I believe this so much to the point that this Jen Taylor's performance here, playing as this new AI, the weapon I guess we'll call her, is actually a bit younger and sounds a little bit higher pitch, which makes, kind of adds to the evidence that this is Cortana's younger sister.
You are not Dr. Halsey.
And you're not Kalmiya. You can't be.
I don't believe we've met before. What is your name?
We have met 7 years ago, right before Dr. Halsey issued your failsafe destruction code.
Cortana, Kalmiya, and any other prototypes were created on Castle Base deep underground on Reach a couple years before the fall of Reach, and was essentially created by Dr. Halsey's brain in a complicated process I don't fully understand, but it was done very illegally. And of course Sony knew about it, but it's something that the Infinity, even on the run from Cortana, wouldn't tolerate. In fact, Halsey was convinced in the book that even Palmer would arrest her right on the spot if she knew what she sent Blue Team down there on Reach to grab. It's possible that this new Cortana was created in secret on the Infinity, or at the very least allowed to exist momentarily out of desperation of the Infinity and humanity to get everything back in order. And it was probably allowed reluctantly by Thomas Lasky, the captain of the Infinity, to be done. Now, this is all super important because it will come back to play into my theory soon. But from the scene here, it seems like her only purpose of existing is not to help Chief with missions or something like that, but it's just to help Chief delete Cortana. That's ultimately her goal is. And upon failure, she was supposed to basically self-delete. But that didn't happen. Why? This is obviously after the Battle of Zeta and after Master Chief was recovered by the pilot. Wherever they are on Zeta Halo, and this AI does an exposition drop, which I find fascinating for a few reasons, because we, the viewers, have no idea what's going on, but also Master Chief as well. Master Chief obviously has short-term amnesia, at least for the past 5 to 6 months. Maybe it happened right at the battle, maybe he doesn't remember stuff before getting on the ring. But he does seem to understand what the mission is, which is to basically destroy Cortana. But Chief does not remember the events that led up to him in space and eventually found by the pilot. This is the second character now that has looked at Chief confused about him not knowing what is going on.
Oh, easy there, big guy. You're not...
Status report.
Status report? What? There's something you need to see, Chief.
The rogue AI known as Cortana is gone. She's been deleted.
How? By you?
Of course not. Did you hit your head or something?
Chief doesn't know what's going on, at least to some extent. And we've learned last year that Chief will actually have to piece together what happened at the Zeta event and probably other relevant story pieces that will come together as the campaign progresses, and to find out exactly really what happened here. So I believe, based on this information, this is how the story will play out in a chronological order, although I doubt the story will tell itself this way. And also right here, as much as I love this shot, I think the addition of the UNSC being destroyed somewhere in here would be really cool in this shot. So the story, I believe, goes a bit like this. Master Chief and Blue Team are inserted onto Reach to go under Castle Base and grab a few secret boxes, get back to the Infinity. Now, this is pretty relevant because we do know that all of this does happen up to this point, but now I believe this is the part where Halsey has to tell the Infinity, has to tell Thomas Lasky what her true intentions are. And this is where the Infinity somehow finds out that Zeta Halo is a key place to go to. Right? I'm not quite sure how it gets there or how the UNSC finds out about this place, but we do know in Halo Wars 2 art that there is some big, massive war that takes place in Reach's system. And there is also a portal on Reach that leads directly to the Ark. Don't quite know exactly how this might tie in with everything, but if Master Chief as well as the Infinity go to Zeta Halo with the purpose and intent and understanding that that is going to be a place where they can actually stop Cortana, then that is likely how I believe they all ended up there. But the beginning of Halo Infinite starts probably with Master Chief on Zeta Halo, undestroyed and safe, and eventually has some kind of confrontation with Cortana. And something goes horribly, horribly wrong. The Banished show up, the Infinity has to get involved, and eventually ends out in an all-out war. Something causes Zeta Halo to blow up slightly, something for the ring to shatter and cause massive damage throughout the systems. Now, this is where Master Chief ends up floating in space. Somehow, he ended up in space, whether he was trying to escape with Cortana or he was somewhere on the ring when it exploded and just ended up surviving for about 5 or 6 months until he was found by a UNSC pilot that also found himself in a similar situation, just floating and drifting in space for several months until he found the Chief. And eventually, the Chief kicks off the story in the first cutscene, as we saw back in 2019 and now in 2021. But at some point later in the story, Master Chief really is... every character sees him out of the loop. He doesn't remember what happened. He might not even remember specific mission details, like that he was purposed to go delete Cortana himself. This might be an emotional hurdle for him to get over, but obviously things did not go to plan. Upon failure of capturing Cortana, the weapon was supposed to delete herself. And even though Cortana, according to the weapon, was successfully deleted, that wasn't really her mission. Her mission was to simply contain and capture Cortana. But upon failure of not capturing and containing Cortana, the weapon was supposed to delete herself through a subroutine, but it didn't trigger, which we really don't know how that's possible. So two big facts here is that she's supposed to be deleted, this AI, and Cortana is supposed to be simply contained, but she's now deleted. Considering Cortana started this whole disaster and most smart AIs have gone rogue, turning against humanity, I imagine the Infinity made damn sure that this weapon wouldn't just join Cortana and make the war and problem much worse, considering that, Cortana started everything. So whatever stopped her deletion is out of the weapon's control, and is probably relating to Cortana, right? So what stopped her deletion? I believe, actually, that these two fused. In E3 2019's campaign cutscene reveal was actually hidden a UR code that people did not discover for quite a few, many weeks actually after this reveal, but the URL code led to an official Microsoft site of an audio file that might actually be a big part in explaining what is going on here. Take a listen.
This is part of me. I don't know why. I don't know how, but it is me.
So who is this AI and what the heck is going on? Well, here's my theory. I believe Cortana and the weapon have both fused to become one character, and no one knows it yet. But that theory does have some flaws and doesn't really make sense for Cortana's motivations as far as her big goal to bring peace to the galaxy. But what if it was done without her consent? And what if the mission was actually kind of successful? And what if her getting locked inside of the weapon's body is containment? And regarding practical application of bringing in brand new characters like this AI here, it's a bit odd for 343 to make her look extremely close to Cortana, and has already confused many new people interested in Halo Infinite, as well as some Halo fans. But you would think changing her AI color, her design, or voice would be enough instead of just a few facial features. And even having the same hair design makes me question if this was really a great idea from a storytelling perspective. If these characters are not eventually going to be the same one, then they have done a great job at confusing many people that can't tell the difference between Cortana and the weapon. So perhaps Cortana has, at some level, fused with the weapon and has been more or less arrested inside of her coding, if you will, which would explain why, at least according to the weapon, Cortana was deleted, but she herself was not. And perhaps this new AI will end up being the cure of Cortana's logic plague and rampancy issues that led to the events that, ended up in Halo 4 and Halo 5. So even though the weapon seems like a new character, she might just be a placeholder that will eventually dissolve into Cortana being cured. Cortana has already expressed that she is a jealous type, and seeing a new AI with Chief would likely infuriate her and confuse her, which I don't know, maybe led to Zeta Halo blowing up a bit and maybe the UNSC's defeat. And who knows what she might try to do to Chief, maybe out of anger or spite. Cortana's voice plays in Chief's head here actually in this spot. I need you to understand there's not much time. Much time for what? Does it relate to them fusing together? Does it relate to some bigger picture, some bigger plot thread that is going on in the universe? And perhaps this has something to do with the two fusing or defragmenting and Cortana's character arc reversal returning to the good side. Of course, I would still appreciate it if the story didn't take this theory or approach at all, and that I'm completely wrong here, because Cortana, confronted with a weaker but more wholesome, good version of herself, maybe a younger version of herself, could lead to some very dynamic, bizarre, and entertaining conflicts in the story. And honestly, I could not help but root for the weapon here, or whatever her name is, Kalmiya, or some people are saying Fula, because that was actually teased a while back with some toys. And there's actually many names this character could have. Let me know your own theories, ideas, and opinions about what we've discussed here. There's certainly a lot going on here. Maybe I'm wrong about this completely, but that's just my best off the top of my head theory that I'm just sticking with right now because it just seems to make the most sense. If Cortana does have a redemption arc, it will likely come out as insincere and just bad because she's got blood on her hands. She's killed thousands of people in the awakenings of the Guardians. But not only that, but also that the EMPs, which killed countless people that like commercial space travel or airlines, as well as the people and rebels that she killed in cold blood, basically because they refused to bow to her. If Master Chief does save and protect and cure Cortana, it will slightly spoil his character because he would be protecting a murderer. Cortana has to face justice. I'm not just saying this, it is confirmed in the books that Cortana has killed countless innocent people. She is ruined and there needs to be a new pivot. So, anyway, Cortana is soiled as a character in many, many ways, and there's no way of going back. And perhaps there's something about this new character, Kalmiya or Weapon or whatever you want to call her, that will do it in a creative and innovative way, because the story so far looks incredibly solid, thought out, and smart, and done in a very genuine way. So I doubt she would. But let me know down in the comment section below, guys. Be sure to subscribe, join me on the journey of following Halo Infinite, and like this video up. I'll catch you guys in the next one soon. Peace.